these are the people who were involved in setting up this federation movement. The man right there is a Argentinian Jesuit who is a professor of architecture at the Sofia University in Japan. He's now retired, he's almost 80 years old. He's been coming to all our countries and documenting the work that we do. And he first met Jokin. This is Jokin. This is the man whose imagination produced the federation model. He met him in 1974 when Jokin was fighting for his settlement not to be evicted in Bombay. And then we all met Samsuk, whom you've met before, in 1988, when we all got together and started the Asian Coalition of Housing Rights. And then in 1992, we met Joel Bolnick, who is now the secretary in charge of our secretariat, the manager in charge of our secretariat in Cape Town. But he is a South African who was living in the US because he would have been jailed if he was there during the apartheid years. He'd just come back and he was asked by the Council of Churches to set up a meeting in which 80 leaders of townships all over South Africa would meet housing activists from all over the world to start looking at what is happening outside in the world in the area of habitat development. That's me, and this is Celine De Cruz, who was also a coordinator like Joel of STI, but has now moved to Beijing and doesn't stay with us. But this is the group that began STI. And what was special and different between ACHR and STI was that in ACHR, me and people of Spark and other NGOs in Asia were the members of ACHR, initially when it was formed. In SDI, it is the Slum Dwellers Federation that are the members. And I'll show you what we did in India and how it impacted everybody else. So I've put this woman's face here. Her name is Sagira. She came in 1978 to Bombay with 4 children on a ticketless train, being fed on the way from Darbhanga, which is North Bihar near the Nepal border, to Bombay, in search of her husband who had come there to work in the textile industry. And after 2 months of looking for him, she found him, and then they put up a house on the pavements. And it is with women like this that we started Spark, and it is through the partnership with these women's collectives that we call Mahila Milan that the methodology of who we are and how we function began. So NSDF began in 74. It was basically men, leaders who were fighting evictions, and they were in 8 cities and they networked to assist and support them. We started Spark in 84, and in 86 we set up Mahila Milan, which was collectives of slum dwellers living on the pavements of Mumbai. That house, those houses that you see there, what you see in the frame are 4 houses, and they all are 12 feet high with a mezzanine and these little stairs to go up. And in this place, which is about 35 square feet, 8 people live. So we established this alliance in 86, 87. We are partners in every way. We never do anything without everybody agreeing to work on it. And our focus was to start working with the poorest in any city until we found a solution that worked for the bottom 30%. We were not ready to explore anything else. And that was something that we felt very committed to, because we felt that no development trickles down. We keep saying this in academic discourses and in our papers, but we never actually understand the implications of that, because all our development investment always wants the low-hanging fruit. You don't want to do the tough things because it won't get you quick success. But addressing real poverty issues is a slog for a long time. And so we said we're not going to fall into that trap. We're not going to get seduced with projects that will give us money and help us to survive as an organization. And so I have millions of pictures like this. And when you see that arrow, it actually shows you the numbers that the households have given themselves. So the first number there, which is very light, is 23, which is this house, and it goes on to 216. It means that people have given themselves an address, they've given their settlement a name, they have a committee, and they're networked with the federations. And so what this federation process does is it creates a critical mass of people who face similar challenges so that they can start transforming themselves into organizations, into collectives that want to have a say in the solutions that they want to propose to transform their lives. And they hold themselves accountable to not only changing their own lives, but also transforming the city as they do that, which is a very different perspective from the way in which we all look at poor people. We say, this is good for them, we should tell them how to do it, and if they don't do it, they're useless people who don't have any brains. I've heard many very serious activists basically despair because poor people don't listen to them. But they never check out why they don't listen. Is there a logic, or is it only because of some selfish reasons that they don't do it? They don't think. So our starting point was addressing evictions. We said it was a violence of the state against its citizens and against the poorest citizens, because in every city that we work, we see that the poorest people who have sought the sanctity of urban areas to feed themselves, to feed their children, to send them to schools, because the state did not deliver development as it promised to in rural areas, they face the maximum wrath of the city. So our name, Society for the Promotion of Area Resource Center, is based on an idea that poor people require a physical space in their neighborhoods, which is theirs for them to meet, to discuss, to talk, rather than having to come to your place as a bunch of activists who have an organization. So we say, oh, you have to come at 7 o'clock in the evening because it suits me, or come at 2 o'clock, but not when it suits them. So we said, this is your office. You decide when you want to have meetings. You decide your priorities, your agendas. And of course, in the beginning, we had to work together to get that. But by and large, we now have a standard procedure that whenever we have large groups in a particular neighborhood, our organization finances the rent, the electricity, the telephone, and tea and coffee, mainly chai. And the whole idea is that it's their space, they invite people to come and talk to them. So if any of you come to any of our cities, you'll have to go to one of these centers to talk to them. And they'll get together and they'll talk to you. So we have 4 or 5 rituals. These are, we call them rituals because we believe that these are the sets of activities that characterize the member federations with whom we work. So the first one is called savings. Now this is not microcredit as we know it in general development. These are women collecting their own money, documenting it, giving loans on terms that they collectively agree, and they decide whether they want to give up the loan or not take it. It's not part of this grand big microfinance process where you won't get a loan if the other 2 women don't pay for it. This is basically the instrument that we use for first to give women a central position in the locality of learning to manage finance. Two, in most of our neighborhoods, the little money that women collect themselves is used for desperate purposes. I don't have money to buy the meal this evening. Tomorrow morning I have to go and look for a job. I don't have the bus fee. So these are the kind of things these very humble, simple things. And it's like in a family. When I ask you, my mother, for a loan, the mother doesn't say, in how many installments are you going to give it and what is the interest rate. It's like saying, okay, give it whenever you want. They document it, they hold each other accountable for it, and over a period of time, they aggregate it. And based on this, we find that it produces trust, it produces financial literacy, it produces a capacity to make rules, and it becomes an ATM for the community. You can go in the middle of the night, the box of money is in somebody's house. This woman, Lakshmi, is one of the original women who worked with us. She has gone to 15 countries and trained women in all these countries, along with others, on the concept of savings and women's participation. She's now moved to a house after so long. So this is how it looks. This is a box. And it's very interesting. When we met bankers from Citibank who came to visit us, they're the ones who said, oh, this is like an ATM, because you can pick up money from there. And the other thing they said, a full box is psychologically as important in a community as it's important when a bank is there to say that the bank has money for you to withdraw your money. If you feel that the bank has overlent and doesn't have money, everybody goes there to take out their money. We didn't know that. They taught us these words. The second thing we do is we do surveys. We call them enumerations. We do household surveys, we do settlement surveys. And the whole idea is that people collect money, they collect data about themselves, and they, that little drawing there is actually what people do with their hands, and then they color code them, and then we've used it for a range of things. I won't go into details, but most important thing is that people have understood that collecting data is a deeply political activity. And through the contestations with governments and with other agencies that collect data, we've actually proved that the data that poor people collect about themselves is accurate, it is comprehensive, and it forms very often the basis of a lot of negotiations that we do with others. This is a program that is still in Bombay, where we work with the police to, instead of communities working with the police come into the communities and work with us on addressing local problems, because most poor people are frightened of the police. But that's not yet an activity that's gone internationally. The next thing we do is what we call precedent setting. Many things that poor people want are not within the realms of formal projects and programs. So this is, interestingly, the story of the first community toilet that we built. Ani was talking about the sanitation program. Mark spent a lot of time with us exploring this. What we said is that in dense slums, it's impossible to provide individual toilets. So the community said, we want to design a community toilet in which women, children, and men have separate spaces to defecate. There's a community hall, and there's space for caretakers to live in the facility. And the negotiation we had with government was that the state will pay for the cost of the capital construction, and the community would manage and maintain the day-to-day things. Now, this process took us about 3.5 years to design, but today it is one of the standard state and city subsidies that are available to slum dwellers. There are a lot of people against community toilets, but we say that if slums are dense and there's no water and sanitation available, this is the only solution. But what I'm trying to say to you through this is that this idea came out of people's need to address the defecation issue. They thought of the idea, they conceived of a strategy, and then we had resources that actually built this toilet and challenged the government's norms. Subsequently challenged the bank norms too, because nobody in the bank wanted community toilets. And then now these are standard procedure. In Bombay and many other places we get it. This is another interesting thing. So exchanges are very important. People learn from each other. But this thing with the men sitting on top of the roof and the women down is a very classic story for us. The women developed what these guys are sitting on, which is a funicular tile. It costs 1/4 of a RCC, reinforced cement concrete roofing material. So we learned that somewhere and we started doing it in different cities. And in all the cities, the women cast it, and inevitably the men said it's not going to be very safe. So the way to deal with it is to make them jump up and down on that. And now it's a standard ritual. The women do it, then the men go jump up and down, then we say it's okay, then it gets put. But again here, the house was designed, the materials were developed, the women learned to do masonry, and they did that. What you see on top, so the one downstairs is a actual house built with bricks and mortar. On top you have another house design that is done by another group, which is with cloth and wood. So the idea was that through these exchanges, communities that have experienced the process go to another city, do this, show it to them, help them learn it, and then this process goes on. So now these are standard procedures in all our Indian cities. And this is the way we negotiate. We never go to a particular government official's office and plead with him as professionals, saying this is our proposal, this is how it should be done. We have meetings in which minimally there are at least 3,000 to 5,000 people, and we invite these poor people to sit on the stage and answer everybody's question. It's like a town hall thing that you call here. But the important thing is that when large network of people are there, they know what questions they want to ask, there is an actual dialogue. And the politicians and the bureaucrats actually get a sense of what people want. And it's very transformative and very different. This is my favorite picture, I just put it anyway. So this is what we look like. This is all the places in India where we work. Then we come to SDI. So what is SDI? SDI is a process that starts from city federations to federations at the provincial level, national level, to an international level. And it's based on a logic that development, regardless of the fact that it is local, is influenced by dialogue and discussions and resources at different levels. And poor people's organizations must have a voice at all these levels. They must be able to make representations at all these levels. And so this started when we went to Africa to meet the townships in South Africa. And between 92 and 96, without us planning it, but also because the Southern African people were meeting each other, these networks began in different places. And so as a result of this, it started with a small team of people, and now we have almost 200 to 300 leaders across all these countries who visit each other, train each other, teach each other all these things, and make representations about their work. Just like we said in India, the savings book is your membership. And I'm just giving one example of our resettlement program to show you how innovations that came up in one country then moved to another place. So in this case, you see how close this railway track is an active railway track. And just see how close you can go out and touch it like that. That was the state, and that particular cartoon is from our very famous cartoonist called Lakshman, where he basically has this thing say, the bureaucrat telling the politician that it might be easier to move the track rather than to move the people because they won't move. And so what we did was, we actually demonstrated that people are ready to move. We surveyed all the informal settlements and the structures along the railway track. We numbered everything, we gave them ID cards, and we proved to both the government and the bank that if you actually allow poor people to design and execute this multi-million-dollar investment will actually happen on time. And I think it did. So this was between 2000 and 2011. And we went to Nairobi and they had the same problem. And neither the bank nor the governments thought of any other solution other than allowing evictions to occur quietly. And then the federations took the government and the railways to India and started working there. This is the railway settlements in the Philippines. We again had an exchange with them and we negotiated different ways of addressing this. And basically, our strategy has been that the role that poor people can play in the solution is what gets transferred. And then the local situation, the local negotiations will develop the details. But the beauty of this process is that just like if the bank comes in, it will bring experts to assist and support, or the government will bring consultants, slum dwellers bring their own consultants. These are other communities that have experienced this process and will negotiate for them. The other thing we are doing is we are helping different cities reformulate how they can do area planning. Because usually they have norms for the whole city, and then the slum dwellers can never do this. So this is the first project that we did in Nairobi, where they said that so long as you adhere to some basic principles, we will allow you to build the houses. And based on that, they've got many new contracts to work. All the roofing material here was done like the funicular roofing that you saw. And so what we are seeing right now, which is I think one of the very serious topics for future discussions on slums, is that the inability of cities to look at large informal settlements, which are like towns, are producing such densities that when they are looked at the tipping point when nothing can grow more, means that there is no good solution. Even if people and government get together, the solutions are not sustainable, they won't work for the residents. And so we are saying that in the new habitat agenda, we have to recommend that as soon as the city acknowledges that this is an informal settlement, it puts water and sanitation immediately. It doesn't wait for it to be like this. Because now when it's like this, you cannot put in water, you cannot put sewers, you cannot do pathways. But in this particular case in India, this is a place called Dharavi. The government listened to a consultant who divided Dharavi into 5 pieces of the cake. And then they tendered out for international investors to come and redevelop this. They didn't know how many households were there. They didn't have identification of who would be entitled to what. They didn't acknowledge that 2/3 of residents of Dharavi worked in Dharavi, and they didn't acknowledge that if you look at the at what was the total value of the output of all the informal businesses here, they were more than 25% of the formal SEZs that were set up in India. You know, these special economic zones, they were given concessions, this, that, but this produced more than what the 25% did. So from 2004, we opposed this. And what we did is, we took a big Google map, which is like double the size of this, put it on the floor, and every single neighborhood came and they mapped themselves. Everybody knew, people in them, they knew, they had a name for the neighborhood, they had everything. And so, based on this, we worked with an architectural institution, and we developed a new methodology of how you understand and map brownfield areas. Because all the architects who came with these guys were behaving, we'll just clean it up and start again. As if people's lives and businesses and everything was just inconsequential to this new plan. So the residents of Dharavi fought this, and while they gained it in terms of this situation being cancelled, this whole project was cancelled, even today the government doesn't want to listen to what people want to say, because both the government and the private sector will earn enormous amounts of money by giving very minimal things to people in difficult circumstances, and we predict that the process of gentrification will evict almost 2/3 of the people within 3 years. So it's at a bit of a standstill right now. The same thing is happening in Old Fadama in Accra. For 11 years, they have been fighting government for evictions, and now they have just managed to get an agreement that they will be rehabilitated on site. And the strategies of how to do the resistance, how to fight for it, are all part of the SDI process. So the toilets that we designed and built in Bombay, this one was a model one built in Kampala. It's even more elaborate because there was more money there. So the toilets are down, the community center is in the middle, and there's a big hall on top, and at the back side is for the people who live there. So like this, there are toilets now coming up in all the cities. And so now we have this big campaign called the Know Your City campaign, in which UCLG and SDI promote a partnership between the mayor and the slum dwellers to map the informal city and to start analyzing the kind of investment that is being put there and the impact of that. And we're taking this to every international event that we can. You'll see, those of you going to Quito will see this campaign there. And the whole idea is that communities will own this data, they will share it with the city. We still haven't figured out how we're going to share it with everybody else. Everybody wants our data, but they won't give us their data. So we're saying, we're going to sit on this. We'll see how it goes. So what I want to end up, I mean, there are more slides, but what I want to end up saying is that I come here to explore what can SDI and WRI do together, and what are the protocols of relationships that we need to establish for a professional group like yours to work in partnership with slum dwellers. You know, how do we design this so that it's mutually beneficial? Because we all in SDI believe that the solutions for the next millennium are not going to come out of doing more of the same. And we think that all of us will have to get out of our comfort zone and make partners of our worst enemies. Because we are all going to coexist in the city, and we have to build the confidence and capacity to negotiate for a solution that improves the quality of both our lives. We all have to give up something, but I don't think that unless there is that kind of political exploration, that our leaders, our administrators are going to provide the solution, or technicians are going to provide. It's going to be a political process, which means we all have to negotiate with people we love to hate. So the Federation has taught me, I didn't believe in this. But when the pavement dwellers had a fight with the state, community women said, you have to go and talk to him. You have to go and talk to the commissioner. You have to go and talk to the administrator. He said, I hate him. He's come and broken your house. He said, it doesn't matter. We want to live in the city. You need to go and talk to him. And the same thing happens with institutions, with associations. I mean, mayors and slum dwellers have deep angst about each other. Whatever beautiful things mayors say when they come to the UN. There's a deep angst against informality except for vote banks. That has to change. So communities are saying we're going to change, but we also need others to change as we go along. So I'll stop there.